Okay, great. I think recording started. Okay, so today's session, I think basically we are going to cover that's a continuation of the last session. So I think when I'm ending of the last session, so I have shared with you a small template, right? A small template on test plan, right? So I'm going to deep dive with the test plan template and trying to show that how to develop a test plan. So because there will be exercise for you on the test plan side, and this will be area probably will be evaluated at the US final exam as right, because of the test plan is one of fundamental area, and especially you should know, and you will be evaluated as it. So because of that, today, so actually, I'm going to show how we are going to do that. Okay. So, and I will share the same with you after once we have done the session, so then you can refer it. So basically, the same case study we will be using because it's easy unless you might have recap all the things again. Okay. So the taxi booking app is the whole application we will use for all these coming sessions as well. So again, so right now, so what I'm going to discuss with you how to develop a test plan or quality management plan. So that's a master. It's kind of Bible for testing, right? So where are your projects? So all the testing has been you defined, and all the test strategies and everything will be derived. And you mentioned all the details of how we are going to test, right? So because of that, so the question right now I was given to you last time is that when you're ending the session. So taxi booking app, right? So in the taxi booking app, how we could build a test plan, right? So I think will I share with you the template as well. So we'll go by the template. So we'll go by the template, and then we'll look at how to do it. Basically, these areas will be required. So we will be covering. So part of this plan. So introduction, requirement for testing, product risk. I think we discuss one by one. So what I am going to show today is how to do it in actual project if we are given actual project. So test strategy, testing times, methodology, acceptance criteria, schedule, team structure, roles, responsibilities, results, and report and quality gates. Okay. So so I think I'll be sharing the document that you can download the template. So we'll get the template first. So let me stop the sharing the presentation and let me start sharing the template. Hope you can see the my screen. Right. So then so the basically will this is template share. So let me show the Then with the heading your header of the document. So the next page units you will be starting completing. So all the things that you mentioned in the blue color you need to complete, right? So all those are depend on your project, what you're going to attack. First of all, are default template content. So what is in black color, it's template content. But whatever in the blue color, you have to fill it or you have to write it. You have to complete it. So let's see one by one, one by one. Right? So we are going to do that. So the assignment is, so this is the exit, right? So this is your project. So then what you need to do is, and then this is the final date where you complete the document. What will get you take that test. Right? So this is the most step that you need to attend. But if you have any questions, then there just throw it. So then it's easy to discuss rather than doing it at last. So let me. So here, so introduction, we have multiple subtopics. So purpose is it's common. So use this quotation kind of to describe testing strategy and overall approach that will drive the testing of the project, right? So that's fine. That is, you can keep it as default. There's nothing to change. And that's basically the purpose described that we are going to use this document. So project overview, that's definitely you have to type. So you have to type overview of your project, whatever is right. So in this case, you can take this the problem as this. So what how I describe the problem, we can take it as for the moment, but what the project we are going to clearly articulate what is the overview basically. So basically, so once you do that, this color has to be changed. It can't be blue now. It need to be black. So they can just copy paste the overview then basically for the text searches, right? So but you have to build that maybe like a small description like this. Okay. That's the most essential for scope. So what is your scope and what is the scope of your project? So basically what we are going to do. So so basically it will depend on your application and what the project. But if you look at this, right, so then you need to test. Basically, you have to do the functional testing. That's called. So that's a primary area. But in addition to that, so there is functional testing, and there are so many other things will come in part of scope. So basically, if it's a app, so you have to answer basically what are the requirement plus you are going to. So if you go to here, so there's nothing, right? So because of that, here we have to mention not in different scope, what are the specific requirements we are going to test. So part of your testing. So basically, if you have given, uh, so this, if you are going to take this app, right? So we consider when you are doing the test estimation, we consider four areas, four windows. So let me get that answer. Yeah, so this exercise what we have used is we use set of functionality. So this functionality will be your in scope because these are what we are going to test, right? So this is the functionality, basically functionality is what we are going to test. So if that's the case, so this you have to mention as a scope. So here you can see testing follow maybe use that. So this will you might have take. So if you're going to do the functional or information, so then you have to mention values then set point. So this you have to mention. So then autoscope. So what you can see you autoscopes and so whatever the requirements that you are not going to test or whatever the specific testing that you're not going to cover that you have to mention it. So I think so part of your testing you are not going to conduct security testing. Or if you are going to use if you're not going to do the deployment after the testing. So if you are going to do some certain activities that you're not going to, so then you have to clearly mention. If in case if you are going to go, if you have decided to not to test for certain functionalities, so you have testing on functionalities. So why it's like this? So if you think payment gateway is not going to integrate at this point, right? This validation is not what we do. So this is coming in the future. So then address the specific functionalities. Yeah. But then yeah, that's planning. Then what you need to do, you have to ensure any specific for deployment. Maybe you waiting the specific thing. Maybe you are going to do security testing because it's you don't have the capability or you it's not part of the project. So it's security. So likewise, you have to mention all the scores area. So you are not going to test this specific function and you are not going to do these specific activities. Right? Then basically the collection, deployment and security. So then you have to mention that as well in this section. So is it clear up to now? Okay. So then the most essential thing. So just right? So that we discuss this from. So here, this strategy is basically how we are going to test. Yeah, so the strategy that we discuss is the risk-based testing. So always, but strategies can be used, right? So what we have discussed and what we have practiced is the risk-based strategy. So hence, we will be using risk-based strategy part of this campaign, but there are many other strategies that probably we are not going to discuss because these are risk-based strategy, right? So that's one key strategy that every industry, every organization that you use, right? Because of that, looked at other strategies. So basically, we need to identify this. So, so what are the risks? So that's the next question. So coming in, give me a second. I will share the strategy that we discussed is Correct. First of it works, right? So integration with the Google Maps might not work properly. That's the one risk. So that we have noticed that's a very high risk. So mitigation is perform integration. Right? This is so the functionality of the textbook in workflow completely might not work. So this high risk first should be as the so mitigation system. So the other is this will be, since it will be integrated in the payment gateway, so they might have security vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities might have. The next one, what we discuss is other is can you remember? Yeah, so the one key risk is the content users that if somebody is trying to log in. So the other is this con differences of accident. So the main one is a cross browser, right? So it is like this can be because it's not high because some browsers might so because of this, the other one is the that's again variant because some of them is like so the compatibility is so maybe one milestone we can say the yeah, the UIT so the app is not consistent. Different colors, different themes used in different pages. So might not. So we are discussing all this might not consist. So this is a little one. So UI theme might not consistent, but there's no major impact, right now it's there might have such a situation in any application, so we can see even right. So that's but we have to identify there's a risk. Realistic. So that will be the so all these comes as a mitigation plans, right? So all these are the risk based. So this is how we need to do that, right? So we need to understand the but will be the breaking points. So what might in future. These are basically risks. This is not something actually happened. So we see these points might happen in your application, our application. So because how it has been developed, we suspect. So this integration, Google third-party integration, definitely there might have some issues with that, and it might not work because we are integrating third-party API. So because our developers might configure it incorrectly, might pass incorrect values. So many things might happen, right? So because of that, there's a possibility of that failing that point. So and functionality of flexibility obviously might fail. Right? Security vulnerabilities might exist because integration how we done. We might try to store these data in the DB, or we might not hash these numbers or security things in when they integrating when you're passing the payment get the information. So then it will be there might be vulnerable. People might can hack and open then get this information. So because of that we have to do the web security testing. So that's the case. So concurrent use access. So because same time multiple people will do the bookings, right? The same app, same driver, people, same location, there will be many risk people, right? Because the same time people will click on it. So but if application couldn't handle this concurrent access, and if they book one text for all the users who click on one single point, so that it will mess it up, right? So because of that, that possible situation scenario, the concurrent might not work. So there's a most risk that most risk that we could be able to figure it out because this is most probably might happen. Right? So if these things has not probably sessions are handled properly, or concurrent queues are not handled properly, definitely developers might ending up introducing the issues or defects or bugs in especially in the concurrent. So how to avoid that? So we need to do the performance. The application might not work with the multiple browsers, obviously, because at least we need to do the cross-browser testing for main browsers and all devices. It might work Android, it might not work iOS, or even Android, Samsung might work, or some other phone might not work. Right? So at least we need to identify what are the key devices. This information you can find out in the even web, right? So even you can find out what are the device usage in global, you can see that. So if it is only Sri Lankan app, so you can find that how what is the device usage of Sri Lanka. So this information available publicly. They will say there are 100,000 users use Apple and 500,000 users use Samsung. So those information are available. You can find it. So based on that, you can figure it out what are the devices you need to test. And UI team, that's a obvious scenario most of the time. Sometimes because multiple developers are developed the UI, it might not consist. Or some of the UX designers might get changed. So many things might happen. So these are the few key, right? But you could ideally in real project, you will find out at least 10, 15 risks, not 3, 4, sometimes 20, 30. I have seen some projects, they more than 30 risks identified and 30 different type of testing types as recommended. Right? So there are situations like that, right? So but here I just identified it for sake of our completing our test plan. Just accurate seven, right? So we have seven. So these are the product risks. So we need to identify this. To do this exercise, definitely you need to have some kind of expertise. Maybe junior or fresher or new joinee or just engineer. Sometimes you might not be able to, right? So, but that need do the correct one. So to identify these in your knowledge, you can do it for even your evaluation or your exercise assignment. But in real application, real project, you should have this experience, right? Unless it will, you might end up in not identify the correct ones, right? So that is more risk. So, but to know this, how we are going to do that, that is when you do the mistakes, but you can identify this, right? So that's the basically risk-based strategy. Okay. So let's move on to other areas. Give me 1 minute. So okay, let's move on, right? So this is the risk that we identify. So based on this risk, we need to identify the testing levels. So what is mean by testing levels? Basically, what we have identified as a strategy will come as testing levels. So sometimes these risks, same testing time. So if there are, we might have multiple risks. So if like this, so there will be a risk like this. This is concurrent. So there will be a risk application might not work for 10,000 users. And so this is also what kind of, this is also this is also a risk, high risk, because if they are going to expand your user base, so this is a high risk. So again, this is performance risk. That's the step, right? So you need to edit. So you might come up with multiple, so same testing type to recover, so mitigate different testing risks, right? So like it will be like, so then now you need to list down all these testing sites. What are the just functional testing, right? Run is functional testing, taking based on the risks that the adequate above, right? So we take the functional testing, the iteration, right? Integration testing. So the third, so then performance. So, but we will not repeat, right? So only one time. So though there are multiple risks, we do the performance to mitigate that risk. So, but testing level, we will list down all the unit, right? Then security, then device. So then, seven, right? So this, so you can give small description if required. So, so the small description is you can say, so this specific functional testing will conduct, or this specific sub-functional testing will be conducted like this. Where maybe you can describe it, right? So integration, you can say, yes. So Google Map integration. That's one way we are going to do, right? Something like that. So you can give it small description. Performance, you can say you are going to do maybe concurrent and string. So maximum user stress. So very high level. Security. So we mentioned initially, security is not part of our scope because we don't have expertise or something like that. Right? So then, so you need to be, it's a risk, but you can't do that. So then you have to mention this is out of scope. And so security, something like that. So then organization has to hire different database or some entity and get it done. Right? So you have to mention that. Cross browser, you can say you are testing for the IE. So H, we don't have HI now. H pro and Firefox, something like that. You can mention device compatibility. You can say UIs and UI testing. So can be nothing special in that, but you can say whatever you want. So you can say like something like that. So this is table you have to fill it. So this is testing levels. You testing levels will derive based on the mitigation strategy that we figure it out. So next, once you do that, you will have to, this is very high level summary. So that to just to get understanding how what they are going to do it, you have to detail it. Right? So that's the essential. So that's the challenge. So how to detail it. So detail it. So, so if you're going to detail it, you have to mention so whatever this whatever module one, maybe J user journey one to maybe 20 user journeys. Some I'm just writing in E cover, right? So and how we are going to cover. So test design techniques will be used for this different. So then, so something like that. This is how we are going to do that. You have to tell them. Okay. Oh, so before, so you have to, what are the usages? something like. So then little you need to detail what are your journeys, why you have selected all this information has to be there, but I'm not going to deep dive. But cross-browser testing, you can say what are the browsers, what are the versions, all this information, right? You have to only not this, these are the versions or latest versions. Three, 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 two, two, three. Latest versions of Firefox with something. So you had to deep dive. So it's called deep dive. So then you need to come up with. So I think that's this level. So with this information, you have to get it based on your risk that you identified. Then you can list down like this. So next, once you have done this, you need to go to the test approach. And test approach is one of the essential things. So this is a further you are going to detail is testing types. The first thing is test design approach. So test approach has few. How we are going to do it. So you can say like this. You can say this following following test design techniques will be used for test design. So you have to listen. So we discuss about set of test design techniques, right? What are the test design techniques we discuss? We can use them. Right? So I hope you can remember these things. This is exactly feeling what we have done, right? So test design techniques. So we have set up like pairwise, sorry, boundary value. There's a showing template. So we will use boundary value. Right. Then equal option, something like that. Option. So you have to skew it. Right? So then there are so you have to what other test design techniques are you going to use and how we are going to derive. So are you going to derive mind map, derive mind map first, and then use about design technique and we'll develop test cases. Right? Something like that. You have to detail it. So what exact the strategy, step by step, you have to detail it. So first thing is so basically how we are going to design is your design techniques. So nothing else, right? So design techniques you have to clearly mention. So which design techniques? If you're going to use the pairwise techniques, so you have to mention it pairwise testing techniques. Or if you're going to use only mind map, or if you're going to not going to do any design technique because very straightforward, so then you have to mention here. So no, none of design techniques will be used. The requirement have only few user journeys, and it's very straightforward, and you can quickly design. There are only minimum test cases, positive and negative test cases. Right? So basically, you have to tell that as well. So you will be developing positive and negative test cases as well. All this information I have to include. So detailed about, right? So we have to do that. So that's helpful. So that's the design. So basically we have few criteria, right? So then we have to tell how we are going to do the execution, right? So basically we have to tell this execution will be conducted as per the entry criteria mentioned below, and testing ex- test execution at the actual test execution will be completed based on exit criteria mentioned below. Right? We have to define. So we discussed exit criteria, right, in the last. So this is the key thing that you have to mention. So then you have to mention your entry exit criteria, right? That is really mentioned. So basically, why we are defining this? If you are unable to do this, if you are unable to uh, complete the exit criteria or make it green, most probably you will not start testing because you can't start. Basically, what are the key things? Test environment should develop, right? So that's fundamental, right? So we'll take it test environment. So without having test environment, you can't test it, right? So then you should have test data. Without having test data, if you want to do a login test, you should have enough username passwords and incorrect username password for incorrect username password. All this information you should have, right? That's the test data. You don't have. So if you are going to do the payment, so you should have some sample credit card details, bank account details that you can use for the testing perspective. Right? Maybe sample, so maybe some purchase cards you should develop. So code has to be clearly merged and done, right? Development has completed with unit test, right? So most of the time, developer has, that's the one key problem. Developer has completed development, but they might not have done the unit test. That is developer's responsibility. If they haven't done unit testing, we can't start testing. Right? That's a fundamental entry criteria. If they haven't done, sorry, we have to reject the release. So we, as a QA team, we have right to tell we are not going to start until unit testing is completed. The same time, there are entry criteria for us as a right, QA team as well. So those are the test cases and scripts. If we have automation, then the scripts has been reviewed, approved, and available. Right? If it is not available, if you have not done the test cases, you will not allow to start because if you are in the basically if you are just developing the test cases, but it is not in the usable state, partially half-baked test cases. So then you can't start testing. So then you will not allow that. So this has to be validated. If all green, only you can start the testing. If it is red, ideally you can't, but there will be some scenario, maybe some certain things, test case development. You have done maybe some modules is pending. So then you might allow to start testing for the test cases, what is developed and reviewed and signed off. The area, only the modules there. So then even it's the red, you might able to start to work. But that's a conditional factor that will be reviewed by the seniors of the project and will agree for the consider the situation. It's a case by case thing. So sometimes unit testing may be done partially. Right now they don't have developers to do the unit testing or something like that, or they have manually tested the application and release it. So then sometimes we might be able to accept. So then the unit testing is not done, but still it's red. But we decided to start. So then you can put that comment here at the time of testing. So this is a live document. If there is anything changed, you have to update it. Okay. So then it comes to the exit criteria. That's also very essential. Exit criteria will derive how we are going to stop your testing. So because you just can't stop the testing based on your wish. So it has been clearly mentioned and agreed, right? So first thing is all the test case scripts or test cases has to be executed. This is industry standard. If it is not 100%, ideally we should not stop testing until it comes to 100%. So that's industry standard. So that everyone has to follow. But some organization or some projects can alter this. They might say we don't expect 100%, 98% execution is out, 95% execution is out. But industry standard is 100, and unless it will not allow to complete. So everything has to be executed. So then pass rate. So here we need 90% pass rate. That means if you have 100 test cases developed, you have to run all the 100 test cases, and out of 100, 90 should have passed when you are stopping your testing. But ideally, industry standard is it's not yet 90, now it's 95. So that's the current industry standard. Without having 95 passes, that means if you have written 100 test cases, out of 100, 95 has been passed. So this validation you have to do, and you have to show to the leadership. But you have to tell it in your test plan. If you haven't tell this, you can't do that at the end. Right? At the execution completion, you can say this product is not stable, I can't release, or something like that. You can't tell that. So then it has been mentioned in your test plan. And no open critical and high severity defects. That's the fun. Security showstoppers and high. So those defects, there could be ideally zero critical high defects. That's the industry standard, but some organizations say it's 100% critical and 99% high, maybe small amount of high open, 98%, 95%, or 5% available. And people can say like that, but ideal industry standard is it should be zero, no open critical issues when you are completing that test. And so, though we allow medium and high defects, all remaining defects has to be triaged and agreed. This is good, okay to have at this point. So think you can't come defect all the defects developers might not have banded and they might not even fix. But these defects only should contain medium and low defects, and all those defects we need to either cancel or document or change request for the future release. And we need to right? Entire team, PM, project manager, architect, QLED, everybody has to say these are okay to go at this point because we can't do that. But it has to be documented, it has to be considered as a future development or future fixes and documented. So that's if it is not done, this documentation is not done, you can't release, you can't complete your test. Right? Then all expected actual results are captured. That is very essential because once you test that, you should have evidence. You might tell this is past today, but later day people will come and say, though you have marked this test case pass, right now it's not pass, it's a fail. Maybe you have not done the testing correctly. People comment like that. So why that might happen? Because when the developers are fixing, they might break working parts as well. So because of that, they might tell the defect was there from the beginning, you didn't find it. So something like that, they can't comment it, right? To avoid that, you should have screenshots or logs captured. If they come and say, okay, no, it's an old defect, you didn't find out right now, you are telling now it's code break is false, then you can show, hey, this is the screenshot of my test case, or this is the logs of my test case execution. Say it's mentioned, it's passed. So you can see that you should have evidence. If you don't have evidence, you might be in a problematic, right? So all the test metrics collected. So we discussed last time test metric, defect density, defect severity, defect remarks. All this has to be collected and shown to the leadership. The next ending, all defect log, defect trackers. Okay, all defects what you have identified. Maybe because of your developer is one of your friend, he might say, don't log this defect, so I will offline fix it. Right? So you can't do that. You have to raise all the defects and you need to confirm your results is finalized, no more any defects. Right? So that is very essential. So once you have tested, so you have to clean up the environment and keep the ready for UAT or production deployment or something like that if required. So those things will be in the criteria. So exit criteria. You have to make sure everything is green, everything is perfect if you are completing your testing. If not, you can't complete, then you have to show this is red, my testing can't be completed. So something like that. So you have to highlight, right? You have to escalate. You have to show those dashboards. So if you have mentioned this information in project plan, so test plan, only you can do that. Right? Unless people will come and say, why you are not allowing to release this product? So then you can't say it has a high defects. Then he will ask, why you are coming and tell now? You didn't tell when they started testing. We shouldn't have the high defects. So that is place you mentioned. This is your self-confidence. Right? So this is very essential. You have to mention at the execution. This is how we are going to do. The third section is how we are going to manage your defects. Right. So you clearly need to mention your defects has four categories because this category is essential because here you are saying no critical and high defects. Developer or project manager might come and tell your defects are not you though you say you have open critical and high defects. None of defects are critical and high because though you are telling though actually those are medium and low. They might come and argue and challenge and they might push you to reduce the priority because then you can release the product. To avoid that, you have to define what is critical. If function is blocked, it is critical. The function is not unstable and no workaround. ෆන්ක්ෂන් ටික බ්ලොක් නෑ නමුත් ඔයාලට කරන්න බෑ එහෙම ඩිෆෙක්ට් එහෙම ක්‍රෑෂස් එනවා and work කරන්නත් නෑ ක්‍රෑෂ් එකක් ආවම මොකක් කරලා බෑ බ්ලොක් වෙනවා ලොයිට් ටෙස්ටිං බ්ලොක් වෙනවා so these are new again so then the issues are little functional but you might have workaround that means you can you can log in when we are looking to the page. It will land at not to the home page. It will land to the new email page. It's Zoom. So then you can click the home page and go back. Though it's a defect, still you can perform the activity. So then you can say medium. And low is basically UI and cosmetic defects. So if developer or PM or somebody is coming and arguing with you, your defects are not critical, then you can show the test plan. Hey, that's why I'm saying this is critical because it's a block. You can't do anything on this sub console. But it's not a blocker, but you can't proceed. You don't have workaround. You have to start with that. Then you can simply justify this and you can survive. Right? So this is very essential to mention in this plan. Yeah. Okay. So am I clear up to this point? This is we have to feel it. Right? This is I have given some sample. This is fine. This is clear. We have to tell. Up to this point, is it all here? Right. Okay, great. So then, so I think basically approach is clear. The approach is the most essential thing. So we need to do very carefully and very clearly. Everything should be perfect because unless you will get struggle later, right? So with that, you need to very clearly define this. This is the heart of your test plan, right? Then you have to tell your team structure. How you can tell your team structure? That's based on the estimation we did, right? We did exercise, right? We identified how many QA leads, QA managers, clean engineers, right? Once you have done estimation, you will know this information, right? You should have one, maybe two QA leads, three senior engineers, six engineers, and something like that. You will find out based on your estimation. This is has to mention. So based on this information, project manager responsible to provide these resources. Right? If we are asked for two leads and three senior engineers, but we might given only one and two here, then you can argue and you can give because we are clearly mentioned before starting the project you need to have this. And that's very essential. Then roles and responsibilities. I think we discussed this. Very essential to mention it because when you are doing your I think you are manager, your function in the team, leads might come and tell, I don't want to do this stuff. This is not my responsibility. This may be your responsibility. Huh? Or engineer might come and say, this is my manager or my lead is asking to do these things, but I don't have knowledge that ideally my senior engineer has to do. But they are pushing me to do all these additional unwanted, unknown tasks. Yeah, I can't. So that's happened, right? Most of the projects, people will try to get it learned from juniors, what they supposed to do. To avoid that, How we can avoid? You as a manager, you should avoid. You should never allow people to do out of their role, right? We should never allow unless there's a major criticality and special requirement. So think something happened to your senior engineer, they all went sick, and so nobody is available in the team right now, then only engineers are available, then they might have to educate them and get the work done. But in usual scenario, you can't tell do the senior engineers or leads work because you are the engineer and you are the junior. As a junior, you should do everything or something like that. You can't do that. You can't allow it, right? As a manager, you should define these roles. These are the sub activities you have to perform. You can stop them, right? Unless people will come and tell, or sometimes people will tell, and the senior engineer might come and tell, this task is not mine, it's a lead. So why don't you ask lead to do that? But actually, senior engineer is supposed to do it. Then you can say, no, it's your task because it's clearly mentioned in our RNR role, RNR, roles and responsibility. These type of reviews you have to do. Not me or something like that, not lead. So why, how you can do is you have to clearly define. I think we discussed this and we shared the template. So some of the roles I said it in my day. So, but here you have to clearly put all these roles, right? You can refer the rate. So then you can get that information from that there. So then you can put it. But you have to. So then test schedule. So we discussed how to develop the schedule as part of estimation, right? So you have to put the test schedule here as well. That's how these activities you can get it from the estimation you usually do. So that you can meet it. So am I clear up to this point? Anything else? So we have a few more areas to look at. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm just trying to get all the information. Right. So okay, I think it's so this is how we need to do this part, right? Roles, and we need to add schedule from your estimation template, what we have done previously. So then test reporting. So we have to tell how we are going to develop the test reports, right? So we discuss. So when we are reporting, I mentioned there are three different type of people, right? Your peers, or your project team. So that's your team, right? Basically, they also should know the status, right? Developers, your QA team members, because they might en- entertaining some of the subsets. So they all should know. So basically, they should get the daily status report, status progress report, right? So something like that they should get. Right? You have to tell owner maybe QA lead. So ODS will be T, right? Project team. Right? Frequency maybe the. So then you might have to do the weekly review. So weekly test report. So basically that should include another level of summarized data. Maybe how many tests your exit criteria, right? So how many test cases executed so far? It's 80%. How many passed? It's still 85%. It's not come to the 95%. And what are the defect tracking index matrices? What is the defect density, defect severity? What's your burn down? You have to execute daily. How much of test cases you need to execute? What is how you executed and what will be how will be ended? So all this tracking, matrices, everything you have to include in various. And this maybe QA manager has to give a right QA man. And this audience will be the leadership. Project leadership. So who are the leadership? Basically, QA manager, architect, tech lead, project manager, program manager, BA lead, those kind of people, right? Because they should know how this project is going, but they don't want weekly, but you can send it weekly. You don't need to do daily. But then this is tactic. This is operational report. This is tactic, and you have like strategic report as a strategic report is maybe overall project status. So So if this project is green or if this is getting delayed, you need to additional cost, right? All this information, maybe we can do the PM, organization leadership. So they might know, right? It is going beyond the budget, right? This can be decided maybe monthly or maybe bi-weekly. So I will put this bi-weekly, but you can decide based on your project size. It's a large few year running project. Monthly is fine, but it's maybe 3, 4 months project, then bi-weekly status is fine. So you have to tell this. This is a place you can tell how we have, so we discussed how this reporting part last week as well as a part of management. But here you need to mention it, right? So then only you can accommodate it. Then it comes the quality matrices. Right? Quality matrices, what are the quality matrices you are going to measure part of these reports that you have to document. Right? Unless people will come and say, you never mentioned you are going to measure me like this or my product like this, but now you are measuring like that. That is, they will come and say, it's unacceptable. Ideally, you should inform me before tracking me, right? That's how I say. So we know there's a common, even global standard. If you are going to track someone, you can track as a surveillance, right? You can track without informing him. If you're tracking someone, you have to tell. So that's why if the CCTV camera is placed in the public places, they have to put a notice. CCTV camera in operation. Unless you can't put CCTV camera in a public place, right? Similarly, if you are going to measure someone, if you are going to perform someone, they should basically, if somebody is measuring your performance at your exam, that you know, exam is given to measure it without telling you if somebody has measuring your performance, it's illegal, it's not valid, it should not be allowed, right? Even whoever, even university or even government or even police, whoever the people don't have any right to track anyone. Similarly, the same apply for this year. Yeah. So you can track your code quality, project quality without telling. Then you have to tell, I am going to track based on these conditions. And anyone's surveillance is not allowed. Right? So then we have to tell, we discuss these quality matrices. So what are the quality matrices? Basically, requirement, clarity test. So you have to tell how we are going to measure it. Right? You have to tell, I am going to measure number of open questions divided by over all questions or something like that, right? So they have to tell, this is how I am going to measure it. This is how I'm going to measure it. This very clearly you have to tell it here unless you can't measure it, right? So that's a fundamental requirement. You can't measure it without telling. So then you have to tell defect density. And then you have to tell defect density is measuring, you have to tell the formula. Number of defects divided by what how we discuss code line, right? Number of kilo. So basically kilo lines. Kilo lines of how many codes by kilos, thousands, right? Basically code will be very large, right? But if it's very small code, you can have the lines of code, but unless it's kilo lines of, it's not kilo, right? So defect severity. So how we are going to measure defect severity? We need to measure S1 is basically S1 multiplied by 5, S2 multiplied by 3, S2 multiplied by 2, so S2 multiplied by 2 plus S4 divided by how much of S1, S2, S1 plus S2 plus S3 plus S4. So this is the numbers, right? This is how we are going to measure defect severity. So then we discuss defect to remark pressure. So all valid defects divided by all defects reported. Right? So this is how it is. So then we discuss one more thing. Is that all, I guess, right? Yeah. So basically, there you can find out many matrices, but we have to tell these are the matrices I'm going to measure, and this will be part of my reports, right? So then you have to clearly mention. Without telling, you can't measure it, right? You can, you are going to measure, you have to tell it in your test plan, right? QA management plan or QA plan. This is fun. This is very essential. Without doing that, you can't do that. Right. Am I clear up to this point? So there are many other defects. So project schedule variance, on-time delivery, number defect rate. So there's something called defect rate. Defect rate means daily defect injection. How many defects inject by QAT daily? Today we raised 10, yesterday we raised 15, previous day raised 20, something like that. So similarly, there are many matrices people will need. So you need to decide at the beginning what kind of matrices is required. It's a responsibility of QAT to measure all these matrices. Am I clear here up to now? Any questions? Anything you want to ask? I'm not seeing any questions. Even in the chat. Okay, clear, great. Okay, so then we'll move to the next point of the available topic. We almost done. So then we have this environment requirement. This is basically how your test application will be deployed. So application will have UI, or application will have server backend, application will have a DB, application will have a web server. So all these difference, and they might use load balancer to balance the load, right? All this architecture information, you might have either write it or either document it or either make it as a image or make it as a graph. So you have to develop it and you have to put it here. So you might not be able to do it you alone. Definitely you might work with your deployment team, release management team, or whatever the people who decide the architecture of this application. Maybe you might get this information from them, or you might have to discuss with them, or you might have to get it from them directly, the architecture. And you have to mention this is QA environment architecture. And you have to mention if this architecture is going to different from production, live environment, that's also you need to mention here. This is a scale down of production. This production, we are going to use the four load balancers, maybe four machines, but here we are going to use the two load balancers and two machines, scale down the two because we don't have environment to do the testing, something like that. So we have to put that. This is scale down of production or something like that. Right? All this information about the environment has to be mentioned because it's very essential. Thing you tested in a scaled down environment. So based on your testing, your performance testing, everything is scaled down. But in reality, production is environment uh, has got some issues. So then you can say you are testing completely on a scale down, and probably the environment you right now done the production is not different. So because of that, some of these defects might not recreate in testing because there's environment specific. If you haven't done this, you will get caught. You leak the defects, and you are the responsible as a QA team, QA manager, QA lead, and you might have to penalize your career and your job or whatever the way, right? So to avoid that, clearly environment has to be described here, document, and put it here. So then only you can something went wrong, you can argue and sort it out. Okay, so this environment will be basically how servers will be. What are the server types different? So what of the RAM server CPUs? All this information has to be there, right? Not only diagram. You have to tell if you are using 5 machines. These are the 5 machines. Performance of this CPU. This is like this. RAM. This is like this. Network like this. Network is maybe shared network or maybe dedicated network. All this information. Maybe public cloud, all this information has to clearly mention, document it here. So that's very essential. Okay. So that I don't have a document for the uh, any tax looking app, but if you can try to Google it, you can find out this information in generic system. Okay. The last point is dependencies and assumptions. So what is dependencies? To do the testing, there might have dependencies with other projects. Think you can't generate the test data. You need test data from the production system. Currently, they might have a production live system. It might have different users, their data. So you need this data to testing because you can't manufacture data. You need to extract production data. Then only you can validate this scenario. So then maybe deployment team, release management team, or production live operations teams might have to get this data down, database down from the live DB. And they can't directly share it with the asset. They might have to mask the data, right? Either mask, jumble it, because if you can identify the production data, you might know the personal data of the people, right? That is prohibited based on the GDPR. So you might heard about the GDPR, right? GDPR is the European Data Protection Act. It's applied for an entire world. If we are utilizing any data related to the European Union, you can't share it. Or there are many restrictions. So in Sri Lanka, even right now, I think Data Protection Act has been recently accepted in the parliament. So I think based on this, there are a lot of things, right? Because of that, you just can't share the people data, right? You can't collect the people data, share it with people. So there are a lot of protocols. If we are going to do sharing it, it's completely illegal. If somebody can even go for courts and get a changing order, even, right? So because of that, you can't get shared as it is. They have to jumble it. You should not be able to identify the specific persons using the data. So you have to get it there. So that's a clear dependency. Until you get this data, you can't start the testing. So you have to tell to start the testing, there's a dependency from the production management, live operations teams to provide relevant test data with the mass or with the jumble or whatever things that they're supposed to do. They have to mention it. And there will be any dependency. You might not, so the performance testing, you might not able to start the performance testing until first round of testing is completed and defect fixes are done. So if it is delayed, your performance testing will be delayed. Right? There's a clear dependency. So something like those dependencies you have to put clearly, because if somebody delayed, your testing will be get delayed. So then you can show, I put that dependency. My testing will only complete on time if I get the test data on time. So but test data is given very lately, hence I could not able to start testing and it delayed. So you just if you have put that dependency, you can argue and convince your manager or something else leadership and survive. Unless you will get finalized, right? So dependencies are very essential. You need to put it here. And based on so basically here some so sample dependency what we discuss is mm, test data from production support team. Right? This is a dependency. Then you can say uh, um, so few good examples I'm just thinking probably. So I think deployment done by a deployment team, environment deployed by uh, DevOps team, right? Something like so. Bug fix release uh, curve testing. So we have to tell all these dependencies, right? Make it a performance pattern. So if you have mentioned clearly, then you can survive. Right? So then this is the dependencies you need to take. So then you have the assumptions. What is assumptions? Why we need to have assumptions? So ideally, real world, there shouldn't be any assumptions because assumptions we don't know whether it's going to fail or pass. But but unfortunately, we have to assume some of the things unless we can't proceed. Hence, whatever we are assuming, we have to document. So one assumption might be, uh, so production support team will not have uh, will not have problems. So they to share the production data for testing. For the last minute, maybe security audit team come and tell you can't share this with the bank QA team, so this is illegal. So you can't do that. Then you can't do the testing. So because of that, those assumptions. So you know you should clearly mention this data sharing from production will not have legal problems. Right? So those are the assumptions. Similarly, you have to put certain assumptions there really. So then only you can put it. So these assumptions are very essential because if something went wrong, these assumptions, then you can come to say, because I assume this my plan, my testing and everything based on this assumption. But unfortunately, this assumption is not valid, no longer valid, it's failed. Because of that, I have impact. Right? So this how we will have to decide our test plan for a real project. So I think assumptions and that is almost done. I think this is what we discussed at the start of the project. So let me share my plan again. So hope you can see this. Yeah. So this is the introduction to kind of testing. So that's part of scope and scope. Product risk, test strategy, testing times, test methodology for the test types, exit criteria, schedule, team structure, roles and test reporting, quality case. So quality case basically entry and exit criteria, right? Here you don't have different quality case, but quality matrices you might have to mention here. So all these information has to be included. This is actually identically standard based on the IEEE standard. In a test plan, basically it should contain all these things. If it is contain all these things only, it will be considered as a quality management plan or test plan or quality assurance plan, whatever the name you are going to use, that is fine. Different people use different names, but quality management, some people say quality management, some people say quality assurance plan, some people say test management plan, some people say QA test plan, QATP, QA, whatever the name. Right? So this should have this mandatory content. Without having this, you can't develop a test plan. So then once you develop this, so you need to get the review. The review done if you are QA manager develop, QA senior QA leadership from the organization has to be reviewed, project manager has to be reviewed, architect has to be reviewed. So then client has to sign up. Your client tell, I'm happy about your testing strategy test plan. So because of that, I believe the application will be quality. So client has to sign off. Without client sign off, you can't do that. But once client sign off, you have your own authority to get this information. So then you can talk to PM and everybody. You need these resources, you need this information, you need you. This is how we are tracking you. This is how we are going to start. All these things very clearly controlled because client has signed off. Client has agreed to your model. So because of that, it's very essential to have it. Right? So that's all. I think I want to do this actually. I want to do it with you yesterday, but I think we could not able to do it online or sorry offline. But I think since I done the online, you might even clear it. I will share this. Probably I will add few more points to make it more clear. I will share this document. This definitely you will do. You I would like if you would do it yourself again because this knowledge is required, right? So don't definitely this is knowledge required for your evaluations, assignments, and exams as well, right? This is a fundamental key main area in qualification. Without knowing this, you can't be survived, right? Any questions, anything? I think we can wind up little early. Since we run the online, I think we are running a little fast than the doing the university because we need some more additional times when you're reviewing and all those things. But I think online sessions are a little fast. Okay, that's the usual way. Anything else? Any questions? Anything you want to know? Unless we can wind up the session. If you have any questions, unfortunately I am not seeing you are doing the questions, right? Quizzes. Please do that. Please do the quiz, and then I'm working on to sharing it all the recorded videos. We'll do that. So probably even the doing the physical sessions, actually, I'm developing a set of videos for even the physical sessions. Once it's done, I will share all this. So then you can go through any many times you want, right? See, because I don't want to make this content secured or limited so anybody can access and it will be in public, hopefully. So once it's done, we will share the videos. Okay, so if you have any questions, please feel to ask. So you can contact me via mail or WhatsApp or LinkedIn or wherever you want. So I know that I might be busy and might not be able to do that. Always, I won't be able to real time answer, but still you can ask questions everything. And please feel free to do the quizzes. That will help definitely your final exams too, right? So that's why I'm asking, right? Since I know that, right? Doing the last minute hard studying might not work, right? So then it might be difficult to get some good marks as it. So hence try to these quizzes. Okay, if you don't have anything, we can wind up the session. So I will stop the recording right now at the moment. But if you have any questions, you can ask.